Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal Public Affairs program. I'm Jerry Williams. Jason Romano was an Emmy award-winning producer and senior manager at ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports. He has created and produced shows such as Sports Center, Monday Night Football, Mike and Mike in the Morning, and more. And after 17 years, he took a leap of faith and walked from his job at ESPN to pursue sports ministry. And 1 month later, he helped launch the Sports Spectrum podcast, where sports and faith connect. Hear the Jason Romano story, happening now on the WIHS Journal. It's news and public affairs. I first met you personally at Iron Sharpens Iron.
That's right, back in March.
Yeah, I was part of your breakout session, which I had to sit on the floor because it was packed out.
It was packed out. I was so overwhelmed. I was like, wow, you want to come and listen to me speak? This was wonderful. But yeah, it was great to meet you there, man.
Where are you from originally, brother?
From Albany, New York.
Albany.
About 2 hours from here, upstate New York. A little town called Ravenna, New York.
Okay.
Population 2,000. It's tiny. Everybody knew everybody. And sports was my life as a kid. You know, I got two brothers, and all three of us were just huge sports fans.
You are obviously a brother in the Lord. You've committed what you do to Christ. I mean, what's your story in coming to Christ in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, I grew up going to church, but never hearing or understanding what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus.
Right.
Sports was my God. And so I focused on that for many years. Fast forward to the late 90s, and my middle brother, Chris, was the first in our family to truly give his life to the Lord. And he was a changed man. I thought he was crazy. I thought he was, I don't know what I thought, but I know he was changed. He was living one way, and suddenly he was living the other way. And it took me a few years to see and to really understand what that life was like for him. But I watched how he loved his wife. I watched how he loved his newborn son. And that was attractive to me. Ended up at his church on Mother's Day, 2001. So 21 years ago, coming up in a couple weeks here. And I grew up in a church that was more quieter. And, you know, it was a Catholic church. It was more quieter and sort of somber. And then I went to his church, which was a spirit-filled Pentecostal, dancing in the spirit. There was, you know, worship music and hands raised and people clapping. And I thought, wow, these people are nuts. But I heard the message that day. Later on, my brother invites me into the back bedroom of his house and says, Jason, what did you think? I told him it was okay. It was a little weird for me and different, but it was okay. Well, he asked me if he could share the gospel with me that day. And I tell people this story all the time. I didn't fully understand exactly what he was explaining to me, but my heart was open to hear it, and my heart was open to say yes and start the journey. I didn't have to have it figured out.
Right.
I didn't clean myself up and say, you know what, I got to get this right before I just said yes and began the journey that's now been 21 years. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be. The sanctification process is every single day.
Right.
But thank the Lord that he has got a hold of my life, and I just want to do the best I can to live for him and to glorify him in everything I do.
He who began a good work in you shall complete it to the day of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Yeah. Jason Romano is our guest. ESPN.
Yeah.
How did that all happen? 17 years.
17 years. Like I said, sports was my God. So as I grew up and I realized I wasn't going to be a professional athlete as much as I wanted to be, the next best thing was to go into broadcasting and maybe cover sports. So I went to college with a goal in mind, a sole goal to graduate and get a job in broadcasting. Radio was my first love, so I love being here with you and doing this. And I got my first job in radio, in local radio in Albany. And then 3 years later, I got this opportunity to go to ESPN right here in Bristol, Connecticut, where I still live. 17 years, got to work on a lot of fun shows. But then when I became a Christian, I really started to conflict a little bit and not understand that my identity was not found in my job. When you work at a place like ESPN, that's what people want to know and ask you about. So it's very easy for me to fall into the trap of thinking that that's who I am.
Right.
I'm the guy who works at ESPN. But then I realized many years later, that I was a follower of Christ first, who happened to be an ESPN employee.
Right.
I had it backwards for many years. I was an ESPN employee who happened to be a follower of Christ. I started to realize about 10 years into my journey that I was a Christian first everywhere I went, And ESPN was a part of my life, but it wasn't the God of my life. That was, Jesus.
So you were the conductor, if you will, to something that is called the ESPN car wash. Explain the car wash.
It has nothing to do with cars
Right.
or water or soap. It was what we called a day at ESPN when we brought a celebrity or we brought an athlete
Right.
to the campus in Bristol, Connecticut.
Right.
I was part of that for many, many years, and we called it the ESPN car wash. And it was a car wash of sorts because it was really putting that guest through the ringer. When you talk about going through all of the different shows and platforms that ESPN offered, and people would come and they would spend 6, 7, 8 hours
Right.
going through all of these interviews all day long. So we called it the car wash, and
Right.
it's still stuck. I think they still have the car wash. I haven't been there in a few years,
Right.
but I know they had a wing where they had all of the pictures of the car wash guests there because we had so many people coming through, and I had such a great opportunity to meet and spend time with many of my heroes and other people in the world of sports.
Like Dwight Doc Gooden.
Right?
Now, folks, he has a couple of books out, but the Live to Forgive book, he has all these folks that wrote some wonderful things about him. And speaking on the car wash, Dwight Gooden said, "One of my favorite things each time that I did the ESPN car wash was spending time with one of ESPN's employees, Jason Romano. Not only did Jason and I share a love for the New York Mets, where I spent the first 10 years of my career, but both of our lives have also been shaped by addiction."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing to connect with your sports heroes.
Yes.
I'm 9 and 10 years old, and Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry are
Right.
the posters on my wall and the jerseys that I'm wearing and the
yeah.
baseball cards that I'm collecting. And fast forward 20, 30 years later, and I'm spending a full day with these heroes of
Right.
mine. And we come to find out that the connection we have isn't necessarily sports or baseball.
Right.
It's addiction, because I grew up with an alcoholic father. Obviously, Doc Gooden has had his share of issues with addiction. So has Darryl Strawberry.
Right.
So it was amazing to bond with these guys over something that had nothing to do with baseball or the New York Mets. It was something much deeper and addiction. And it was quite shocking, but pretty powerful at the same time.
Jason Romano is our guest. And speaking of Darryl Strawberry, the foreword of your book, Live to Forgive, is by Darryl Strawberry.
Right. I know. It's incredible that he was willing to write that for me. Again, another one of my true heroes in sports, and now a hero in the faith. This guy, Darryl Strawberry, has been truly redeemed by God, and now he is a traveling evangelist who goes around the country, Jerry, sharing the gospel, sharing his story. So God has completely redeemed Darryl Strawberry, and he's now one of my heroes and brothers in the faith, and not just a guy that I rooted for when he was wearing that number 18 at Shea Stadium back in the 80s.
Yeah, I remember him. And I remember, of course, Strawberry just blasting balls out of the park. He had a short bat, didn't he? He's
6'6", and I think he had a 33-inch bat, very short.
Yeah.
But he was quick. He had the quickest stroke. And man, those home runs were majestic. Majestic.
There he goes. New York Mets fan. So Jerry Seinfeld is
he's a big New York Mets fan.
Yes.
Yeah. Him and Jerry and I have no idea who each other are.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We have the Mets in common.
So the book is Live to Forgive, which is your first book. What is Live to Forgive about in a nutshell, your book?
In a nutshell, it's the story of me forgiving my alcoholic father after suffering and going through about 40 years of trauma with him, myself and my brothers, and coming to a place of forgiveness and understanding that God has forgiven each of us every single time we ask him. So we are required, when you look at the Gospels and when you look at what Jesus writes, we are required to forgive those that have hurt us. Right. This book is about my forgiveness journey with my dad, but it's also application and helping others to walk through their own difficult journeys of forgiveness when somebody else has hurt them. So that's why I wrote it, just to help people. I have no interest in sharing my story about my dad unless people ask. And as people started to ask, I realized, well, maybe I could just put it in a book form and others could read it and then hopefully be encouraged in their own journey.
I see Chris Broussard, and I see him all the time. He's made comments about your book and everything, and no one uses the word obviously more than Chris Broussard.
That's true. He's a big basketball guy, obviously.
Yes, he's a basketball guy.
If you watch Fox Sports, obviously you'll know Chris Broussard.
That's right.
Loves to use that word.
Exactly. And I'm very sensitive about little things. I pick up on little quirky things. And
we all have them.
Yeah.
We all have them.
Chris Broussard's is the word obviously.
Yes, we all have them.
That was your first book. You have your latest book called The Uniform of Leadership. What is that all about?
Completely different than the first book. First book was a labor of love, and one of those books that I think will be the one that I'm most proud of because it's my own personal journey with my dad. But the second book is sort of...
And you will have to sort of like tune in tomorrow at this same time to find out what his latest book is all about. That was Jason Romano, formerly of ESPN for 17 years. Now he's with Sports Spectrum, where sports and faith connect. If you would like more information about what you heard today, call WIHS 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily of those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Jerry Williams for the WIHS Journal. It's news and public affairs.